The college football regular season is officially over, and the Heisman Trophy race is coming down to its final stretch. Going into rivalry week, Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza was considered the favorite, but the landscape has shifted dramatically as conference championship weekend approaches. Now it appears the Big Ten title game could decide the Heisman winner. A handful of contenders will have one last opportunity to make their case, while many others are done for the season and will have to leave their fate in the hands of the voters. Among those still on the board, a few signal callers, including Dante Moore, Carr, and Trinidad Chambliss, saw little change in their odds despite strong performances to close out the regular season. Moore threw for nearly 300 yards and a touchdown in a win over Washington. Chambliss had over 350 yards with 4 touchdowns in the Egg Bowl, and Carr managed 2 touchdowns without turning the ball over in a solid victory over Stanford. Ty Simpson, who once led the odds, continues to slip after a less-than-stellar showing in the Iron Bowl. Alabama came away with the win, but Simpson completed just 19 of 35 passes for a little over 100 yards, even though he threw 3 touchdowns without an interception. On the defensive side, Jacob Rodriguez remains the only player in the conversation, but his odds fell after a modest 4-tackle performance in West Virginia's shutout loss. Gunnar Stockton had a mixed showing as well, throwing for just 70 yards and a touchdown, but adding an interception in Georgia's low-scoring win over Georgia Tech. Jeremiah Smith, back on the field for Ohio State against Michigan, scored a touchdown but had minimal overall production, catching only 3 passes for 40 yards. Jeremiah Love had a strong second half of the season and is still in contention, though his final game was limited due to injury, leaving him with just 14 carries for 66 yards and a score. For Mendoza, the final argument comes in the Big Ten championship against a ferocious Ohio State defense. His last performance was solid but unspectacular, completing just 8 of 15 passes for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in a blowout win over Purdue. Diego Pavia has moved up into the second spot, largely thanks to his dynamic play on the ground. Despite 2 interceptions, he rushed for over 160 yards and a touchdown, keeping himself in contention even though Vanderbilt sits idle this weekend. Julian Sayin now leads the odds, returning to the top after tossing 5 interceptions in his latest game, but also throwing for over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns against a tough Michigan defense. With the Big Ten championship looming, the showdown between Sayin and Mendoza could ultimately decide who takes home the Heisman Trophy this season.